The Cleveland Browns have put themselves in a world of trouble. Quarterback is debatably the most important position in all of sports, and the Browns have 5 of them. Let's list them, shall we? You have Deshaun Watson, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dillon Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders. Now that we've made ourselves familiar with names, we can now talk about how each of these guys were acquired by this, great franchise. Deshaun Watson was made a Cleveland Brown through the worst transaction in NFL history and really started this whole conundrum. After he sustained injury, the Browns made a trade to go get Deshaun Watson from the Texans. The trade included 3 first-round picks with 3rd and 5th round picks in there too. Then they had this brilliant plan in place to hand him a fully guaranteed 5-year, $230 million contract. Then he went out and did, well, you know. Joe Flacco was brought in on a 1-year deal, and they are paying him a $4,250,000 salary with $3 million guaranteed and a signing bonus of $1,745,000. They also made a trade for a quarterback this offseason, picking up Kenny Pickett in exchange for a 5th round pick and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Oh yeah, and in the draft, they also selected 2 more quarterbacks, picking Dillon Gabriel pick 94 in the 3rd round, and then Shedeur Sanders later on at pick 144 in the 5th round. The biggest storyline with this group, team, situation, whatever you want to call it, is the competition for the starting job. There's a ton of attention on this team after you've had a Deshaun Watson disaster over the last few years, and the fact that you have a huge name in Shedeur Sanders involved. There are also veterans like Flacco and Pickett in the room, and again, you have the 2 draft picks that were a part of a questionable, at best, draft strategy. There are so many factors and chaotic elements bundled throughout this thing. For Myles Garrett's sake, let's put ourselves under the assumption that the Browns are shooting for a Super Bowl. Well, then your laughs now, because Myles Garrett came back to win. Not the $160 million, guys. Anyways, we'll operate under the winning mindset instead of a rebuilding mindset for this video. So now the question is, who gives the Cleveland Browns the best chance to win football games? I watched all of these guys and we'll talk about each and every one of them, but to start, it'll be Kenny Pickett. We can begin with the bad before we get to the good, and I guess we'll discuss my main concern with Pickett and talk about his inability to process. This is Z curl with the same side dig or basic route. Kenny drops back, hits the back foot, and instead of throwing on time to either route, he decided to take an extra second and throw the ball on the ground after pressure got around. Devontae Smith's got a fin route, Calcaterra gets up the seam, and AJ Brown's ready on the backside. Kenny actually looks left. I'm sure he sees that blitz, but progresses instantly to the seam and panics by the time he gets to Saquon. But look, AJ's there. Back it up. He reads left to right, and before he gets backside, he runs himself up into pressure to get sacked. I'm really not trying to hate too much. This is just his biggest problem in my opinion. This clip will tie something else in. This is a wave concept with AJ Brown as the primary. First, with Luvu blitzing, watch Kenny Pickett get paranoid and quickly get away. Now, he's ready to fire. But wait, AJ Brown isn't definitively open yet, so he waits, lets pressure get close, and now Kenny's moving off his platform and the throw's incomplete thanks to his lackluster placement. All he needs to do was see the nickel attach, and this could have been out on time. But he failed to process that, and the other thing I thought was a weakness, throwing off base, ruined this play further. I didn't really like Kenny Pickett's play under pressure either. You see him get sacked after looking at a double mug, cross dog, 6-man rush look pre-snap. He probably shouldn't have been sacked like he was here. I have issues with Pickett's conservative and safe approach to playing quarterback. When watching an NFL QB, I'd like to see some good and great throws at some point. But then with Kenny here, everything is careful, in bounds, and under control. I actually thought Kenny Pickett kept regressing as his career kept on. I think everything I've already mentioned kind of makes his regression make more sense. Think about it. The more he learned, the more he had to caution against or think about / process, and teams got the jump on him using the blitz and creating pressure against him. Now that the entire Pickett family hates me, we can talk about the good with old Ken. I will say Kenny Pickett is a clutch player, at least what I saw. There were so many 3rd and 4th downs that I watched, and he had a very good batting average. It's 3rd and 6 here, and the Steelers called an Omaha with a pick of sorts, like some sort of rub, to get it one-on-one outside. Kenny had an easy read and ripped it outside with great placement and hit him on time to convert. On this one, you've got 3rd and 8. It's a simple slot fade from trips. It's a single high look, and Kenny has his eyes down the middle during his drop, then adjusts and throws. As you can see, it's an incredible pass right over the shoulder and even had good velocity on it too. He's given a single high safety again and a deep fade route. Good combo. I don't even like his eyes here, but the safety just thought to take AJ Brown's side, so Kenny puts up a decisive throw, letting it go early and lands it nearly perfect downfield. I'll also mention his arm. It was better than I thought or remembered it being, but overall it's tough to look at someone who, in my opinion, has only regressed since he's been in the league, who has so many limitations, and convince yourself that that's the guy that should be the starting quarterback, almost strictly because he has NFL experience. Up next, Dillon Gabriel, the first of the rookie quarterbacks that the Browns drafted this offseason. I will preface this by saying I was not Gabriel's biggest fan during the draft process, and I'll hop into why here in just a second. But I will say after watching more of him, I learned and saw a few things that can give y'all some optimism. I think we can start with the optimistic speak and talk about a few of the positive takeaways from the tape. I think Gabriel's the most mobile quarterback in the room, and I thought that's his biggest upper hand when it comes to this specific group of quarterbacks. But you basically have Kenny Pickett to beat. I think it'd go Dillon, Kenny, Shedeur, and then Flacco. I also found myself noticing Dillon's release. I thought it was quite quick. Here's a smash concept, one under and one over. At the back of the drop, I don't know why he decides to pass on the hitch underneath, but he does and then starts rolling. And you'll see how quick he was here. Right as the receiver got an inch, Dillon Gabriel thought that was good enough and zipped it out of his hand and pinned it on him. Impressive. His accuracy is decent, and I find his most consistent throws were over the middle, which you don't typically hear for smaller guys under center. Speaking of his smaller stature, 99% of quarterbacks with Dillon's size will always be affected by pressure one way or another. Michigan's giving him a Mike blitz, and that pressure makes him get from read one to scrambling very quick, and then the play dies afterwards. Some teach to replace the blitz, but with Gabriel, he's flushed instead of poised and runs away, opposed to throwing that open shallow route underneath to replace the blitz. I don't really have stats to back this, but it seemed interior pressure, blitzes, or winds that would muddy things up. It'd put him in a different mindset. It almost looked like he's in a panic or unsettled in a way. This is one of many examples I could pull from, but once he's in the back of the drop, the interior is already getting walloped, and Gabriel speeds up, moving off balance, and misses a little check down. This is where you'd like to see a little bit more poise and confidence. I won't sit here and talk negative for too long about Gabriel, so I'll speed it up. I also had issues with his feet for someone that's been playing as long as he has, and I thought his precision as a passer wasn't as good as advertised. You hear things, but once I watched, I really didn't see him as too sharp a passer. Now we can move on to the next quarterback, perhaps the most notable, and it's Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur's smart when it comes to reading defenders in action, and let me show you what I mean. This is a classic dagger concept, and during his very deep drop, watch when he's going to throw this one. There's a linebacker in the throwing window, but he sees and knows he's off to cover down low, so he confidently threw that strike in there. Here's another example. This is a bang pivot from the offense, and the defense is bringing a 5-man rush, bringing the boundary nickel and linebacker. Shedeur confirms that and sees it, so he knows where the weak spot will be and replaces the blitz, sneaking one into the heart of the defense. I also saw a lightness in his base that I failed to recognize through the first few times I watched him, but something I made sure to take note of this time around. What I mean is his feet and throwing platform can be very light and easy. He still has firmness in some reps, but I really like seeing the buoyancy or nimbleness from him and his footwork in most of his reps. I think its best, most consistent throw was the fade route within 20 to 30 yards. You are not going to see the spectacular or the magnificent throws deep downfield as often as you'll see him toss the ball over the shoulder for his receivers running fade routes. I seriously thought this was a strength, especially when you mesh in some of his recognition abilities. Say he sees a single high look and can use that to throw a fade outside, only having to worry about one defender. This is kind of a negative and a positive note that I had jotted down. I thought it was nice that Sanders can work through a progression, but I also thought he could get ahead of himself whilst clicking through it. Here's an example of the good. When he sees that defender stay, he's off that, and progresses to the curl, then right to the check down. He throws it and gets an efficient gain. Here's some of the bad now. Off the snap, he's reading right, and by the time he hits the back foot, he's already moved on. But look who comes wide open in a window. Sanders does have other flaws like everyone else, and I'm sure you've heard them all beaten to death. Everyone talks about the lack of physical tools, and I'm rarely seeing or expecting something amazing in any way physically from him. And I'm sure everyone's mentioned his bad habits in the pocket, like the fading or the aimless drops. So I'm not going to sit here and beat them even more. I also thought the scrambler in him will have to die with his college career. I don't think his improvising off-schedule freestyle kind of work will translate on the same field with NFL athletes and NFL smarts. Now, something I thought was talked about the most and praised the most about Shedeur was his pocket passing. But we all know the NFL is a different game, and quite frankly, I'm sure even he knows that he has to be better operating from inside the pocket to be considered an above-average pocket passer at the next level. I'll dive in and we can talk about my issues with what people were calling the strength of his game. There are double moves off the bang pivot concept where the receiver runs a return and the bang cuts back outside. Shedeur, at the time he should be throwing, has the underneath wide spanking open, but he's big play hunting and throws into a tight spot, almost committing a turnover. This is a post stock rail with swing lead and a backside hitch. One, look at this drop. It's aimless and looks so unintentional, but back it up and watch how he plays this. I think he could have thrown the rail. He had a fine gain with the swing lead, and even the backside hitch would have been fine. But at first sign of pressure, Shedeur calls his own number and scoots through the middle. I don't think this is how the NFL wants him to play. I think they'd rather he hit one of the options inside the offensive structure. The absolute best football that I've seen from Shedeur was his on time, on schedule, on rhythm plays and throws. When Shedeur hits the back foot, makes a decisive read and throw, that is how I'd like to see him play all the time. Last and certainly not least, we can go over Joe Flacco, a very seasoned veteran. Flacco's got so much experience in the league, 16 years to be exact, and without surprise, that does show up. This is F choice with a backside double dig concept. When he's ready to throw read one, he does not like it, so he progresses on time and drills it into the dig window over the middle. You talk about progressing, and man, this is the way you draw it up right here. You want to see experience? Well, here you go. This is a smash concept, a way to high-low a single defender, and Flacco reads this in record time and has his football out so early, well placed up and away from coverage. An incredible rep from Flacco, and it definitely takes some time to play football like this. The arms also still got signs of life in there too. Watch this one as Flacco drops back. He sees Darnell Savage so far out of place and recognizes he has a window, so he immediately lets it go and threw a laser to the corner route right where it needed to be. With Joe Flacco last year, there were countless amount of plays in which he was playing within the confines, structure, and timing of the offense. Flacco's got a good arm, experienced, and lackluster mobility. I don't think there's anything else he should be doing except playing on time and delivering the ball when and where he should be. I'd like to see him read, stay on time, and play within himself at this point of his career. Just be a consistent distributor. This is the part where we look into the bad parts of Joe Flacco's game. No one wants to get hit, and that's only exacerbated for a 39-year-old that I watched, and Flacco's turned 40 since. Joe may be an older quarterback, but he'll revert back to the mentality of a younger one once in a while, for better or for worse. Flacco always seems to be searching for some sort of deep ball. Pre-snap, single high look. Post-snap, verified that. And when he's throwing, where would you rather have your quarterback throw this? To the receiver with a corner on top of him and a same side safety over top? Or the wide open one underneath? Well, Flacco decides it's best to take the shot, which ended up missing. Surprise, surprise. One of my biggest personal holdups with the case of Joe Flacco is the momentary lapses in decision making, despite having those 16 years we talked about under his belt in this business. This is two-man stick, and Flacco almost looks like he predetermined where this was going. Real shallow drop and throw all in one motion, and look at the result. Probably should have been intercepted. The defense was sitting on that, waiting for that exact decision to throw it. I don't understand why he didn't read the play properly here. I had a few other minor gripes with Flacco, but overall you see the experience, and when he's doing what's asked of him and staying within his limits, I think he can be a circumstantial winning quarterback. I said it earlier, the biggest storyline or talking point about this whole situation is the quarterback competition to win the starting job. And now I will order the 4 quarterbacks that we just examined in a depth chart style as I would personally place them. Now, I'd cut Kenny Pickett, Dillon Gabriel would be my third string quarterback, and I would select Shedeur Sanders to be the backup to Joe Flacco, who I feel gives the team the best shot to win games right away. But it was very apparent that Joe does have his flaws and could easily be benched if his performance is not up to par. Would the Browns start Gabriel before Shedeur? Yeah, I'd probably guess they would. I'm personally out on that. I'd easily put Shedeur ahead, but it comes down to how they drafted those two quarterbacks. The Cleveland Browns have already made such a mess and have executed some more questionable decisions as a franchise, so I do think they do the correct thing and put Gabriel over Sanders just so they look a little bit better. And I'm sure y'all have got thoughts on this matter, especially if you've watched all the way to this point in the video. Sound off. Let me hear what you have to say. I read all my comments and I'm always intrigued to hear your guys' opinions. Anyways, that'll be it from me. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed, go ahead and leave a like, go down, subscribe, go watch the past content on the channel. It would mean a lot. I'll see you guys next time. Deuces.